Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. And my name is Michael Kohl, and I'm very happy that all of you are joining today's webinar that is part of the CFO 4.0 webinar series. And today's topic is sustainability analytics in SAC. I'm seeing that we have many people today, but I also see that one or two are still dialing in. So I think, yeah, but right now we are complete. And I mean, we don't want to punish anyone for being in time. So I'd say let's get started. Again, a warm welcome, and I'm very happy that that I don't have to do this webinar on my own, and that besides me, I'm very happy that my colleagues Karel and Vadim from MIPCON NDC join us here today. Karel and Vadim, just like me, are, I would say, passionate SAC consultants and have been doing a bunch of projects, not only with SAC, but really in the context of doing ESG, so sustainability analytics, via SAC applications and platforms. And that's why a couple of weeks or months ago, I guess, we decided to do a joint webinar to really have some nice exchange and discuss what our lessons learned are so far. ESG analytics is still a young topic if we compare it with financial reporting platforms and so on, so that we thought it would be a very fruitful exchange to do this webinar together. Karel and Vadim, welcome to the webinar. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Michael, and it is very much a pleasure also for us to join this webinar event. And as you mentioned, the main reason why we joined this call, the main thing which we would like to pass also to participants, is a little bit of an experience from our implementation projects, because as you mentioned, Michael, very correctly, sustainability reporting and analytics is still quite a new domain. And we see that many of the companies, many of our clients are a little bit struggling to take the very first steps. It might seem a little bit confusing regarding what is the right way forward, what should be the technological setup, which area of reporting the companies which we work with should even target. So the main thing which we will talk about also together with Vadim, my colleague, are a little bit of tips and tricks and hints about how to jumpstart the reporting and analytics in the sustainability area. Once again, pleasure to see you everybody on board, and very much looking to the next 55 minutes which are ahead of us.
Exactly. Great. Then let's have a look at the agenda that we've prepared today. Our idea was not only to talk about theory, but really to include certain lessons learned from practice and from the implementations and the discussions also with client projects that we have seen in the past. And that's why we have prepared the following items on today's agenda. First of all, we will give you an overview about SAC as a tool in the context of sustainability analytics. Where are we today, and what are really the capabilities? What is possible, what is not possible, and why it makes sense in our eyes to use SAC for sustainability analytics. In the second section, we will learn that it's not only about the tool as such, but that there are many conceptual aspects that need to be clarified when we implement ESG reporting and ESG controlling platforms, by the way. And to make it very tangible, in the third section, we will present very transparent client projects and also the lessons and the insights that can be derived from these projects that are at the same time, I would say, similar and still very different in terms of what has been done and what is still being done in these projects. And then based on this kind of experience that we will share, for sure we can present certain success factors to really help kickstart the journey for our audience, and also, let's say, to benefit from the do's and don'ts that we have seen, that we have experienced in the engagements in the projects that we've done so far. And last but not least, I should not forget to say that we have a question and answer part at the very end. But for me, it's very, very important to state that please do not hesitate to ask your questions, and please do not wait till the end of the session. Yes, we do have time at the end of the session, but we have that tiny question or Fragen button at the right hand side of your webinar screen. So feel free to drop your questions in the Fragen area during the entire webinar, and whenever we see the opportunity, whenever we see that it makes sense to cover that question right now, then we will pick it up. If not during the webinar, then latest by the end of the session. So that everything that can be clarified gets clarified. Before we really come to the first point, it's very important to us that we center and orientate today's discussion towards the previous experiences, and also the specific points that our audience is interested in, and that is why we have prepared a poll, and we want to start with this very, very small survey that is starting right now. Right now, there should be a red dot here in the Umfragen section that it has just popped up on my screen, and we are very curious for your opinion and for your point of view. And the question is really, do you already have a tool to support sustainability reporting? And by tool, we mean not only Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word for sure, but a more professional, a more robust tool, because that would help us then to understand what level of detail we need to have in the following sections. So we kindly ask you to just select the option that is valid for you and your organization, so that we can evaluate what is really the mainstream position here. And okay, now many of you have already submitted, and the options are no, yes, planned or under investigation. And what I'm learning here from the results is that the majority of participants does not have a separate robust tool for sustainability reporting. So that I think it makes sense that we assign sufficient time to maybe some basic rationales, and also to the question why it might make sense or might not make sense to implement a separate tool for sustainability reporting. Having said that, I think it's time to start with, indeed, the basics. And we called the webinar Sustainability Analytics and ESG Reporting with SAP Analytics Cloud. And that includes two aspects or two pillars, let's say. The first one being sustainability, and the second one SAC for sure. So that it's worth spending a few words on SAC as a tool. SAC obviously stands for SAP Analytics Cloud, and is a new platform that SAP has been promoting for, I would say, the last couple of years, and we see more and more adoption. I think I've attended the first SAP partner workshop where we were presented SAC in 2018 or so, but traction around SAC has really increased over the last, I would say, 1 or 2 years. Now, what is so special about SAC if we compare it with other SAP solutions that can be used for planning or reporting or analytics, such as SAP analysis for office, analysis BPC, business planning on consolidation, then one major difference is clearly the use cases. And that's because SAC really combines the 3 main processes: reporting, planning, and analytics. No consolidation as in BPC, but it's also not as monolithic as for example, Beck's Analyzer has been, because you really have those, you really have an easy opportunity to combine these 3 processes. And what's really remarkable is, on the one hand, the great usability that comes with features such as we see them here, collaboration. So that it's very easy to chat with your colleagues. You can assign work, you can set deadlines. You have a good versioning concept, a very innovative, modern versioning concept. If you compare it with other tools, you can work with value driver trees as a standard feature. So that's nothing that needs to be customized for years. It's just there and it comes out of the box. And especially if we talk about ESG analytics, then the entire thing around visual reporting is very, very important, because you want to be able to steer your sustainability key figures. And to do so, you need a good and easy visualization that goes beyond maybe some color in some numbers or so. And that's definitely a strength of SAC. And just to pick one or two additional examples, data actions are an important feature that can be used to calculate numbers in the database. Later when we come to the project examples, we will see why this is very important, because it just helps that the tool can more than just display a 50 after you have entered 50, but instead really calculate numbers, and by doing so, giving relief to the people and to the controllers, to the ESG teams that do not have to invest so much time with number crunching. And last but not least, self-service data modeling is a really crucial aspect, because and again, that's very important in the ESG area, where we see new regulations, new rules evolving all the time, that you do not want to go back to your IT department and ask them to implement certain change requests, but instead the line of business can manipulate, can build, can develop many things by themselves, so that it's really a tool that's driven by the line of business and that supports a lot of self-service aspects. And why is that important for ESG analytics, and how can that really look in practice? We have an illustration here. Again, we will see more detailed client examples in the following sections. So what you can do, and again, that's only one possible way of doing it. What you can do now with SAC and SAP Analytics Cloud is that you always will have, and that's the bottom of this slide here, you always have certain data sources. That goes without saying, but it's important to know that if we do ESG analytics, then the data sources in many cases will differ substantially from the data sources that we see. For example, when we do financial reporting, financial budgeting, forecasting, or also operational KPI reporting. So we might need, for example, invoice data, because the invoices give us some insights on what's being done in the company, but that's more the financial aspect. What we normally need in addition, depending on the industry that our client is working in, is, for example, energy consumption. And then we have really entirely different systems that need to be connected with data that needs to be provided to analyze in terms of ESG. For example, fleet management. If we consider that that fuels are for sure very, very crucial to take into account in sustainability aspects, this needs to be connected, and it's not always straightforward to connect this kind of data. And for sure, ESG, there's an S and a G in ESG. We also need HR data. And now what can be done, there can also be reasons to do it differently, is we bring all this source data into a BW for HANA that serves then as a single point of truth for ESG analytics. On top of this BW for HANA, which is in fact then, a data, a place for data storage. On top of this data storage, we have the SAC that brings in the nice dashboards that we want to have, that brings reports and stories, how it's being called in SAC, about my energy data, about my GRI reports, with GRI being a very, very important standard for, not the only one to be honest, but a very important standard for sustainability reports. And to come to the next regulation, or for example, we can create reports that cater for the EU taxonomy reporting requirements. All these reports are then, at the end of the day, stories or dashboards that are being created and also being manipulated in SAP Analytics Cloud. And by using them, we can, on the one hand, that goes without saying, meet reporting requirements, but also what-if analysis. Because once I have all my data in one place, and once I have the reports that meet my minimum reporting requirements, I can go to the next level and then really start steering my sustainability aspects. That means how do my CO2 emissions change if I change my fleet data? What if I have fewer or less fuel consumption? What does that do with my ESG key figures? I don't want to go too much in detail here, but that's then in fact the transition from pure ESG reporting to ESG controlling or ESG performance management. That's what can be done. That's how you can apply. And as we said, it's an illustration. That's the general idea behind analytics, ESG analytics with SAC. But to make this more tangible, I'm happy that my colleague Karel will outline in the next section that this does not come only with technology, but there are many conceptual questions. And I'm handing over to you, Karel.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much. I believe you have put down a very nice foundations about the general reporting aspects in the area of sustainability within SAC. And what we'll talk about together with Vadim in the next two sections are, let's say, the specific approach which we tend to use as part of the implementation of sustainability reporting and analytics within SAC. And in the second part, few examples from the already existing and operational projects with our customers, where I will maybe highlight a little bit more details. But first things first. Whenever I talk about technological support of the sustainability reporting and analytics, I usually start with this slide, which, besides the general, of course, 3 ESG domains and the typical KPIs which we usually find within each of the domains, highlights one important factor which is visible on the right side of the slide, and that's the answer to where the data actually comes from. Compared to typical, I would say, or traditional reporting and analytical projects in areas such as finance or sales or HR, what we very quickly realized within or as part of the sustainability aimed projects is that the data requirements are a little bit changing. What it effectively means is that for many of the sustainability KPIs, we cannot simply rely on the fact that the data are already available and ready to be sourced in from the operational company core systems, I would say, such as the ERPs or other financial modules, but that we need to enhance quite substantial amount of data also from manually collected data sets, or as well give the people in the organization which are responsible for this part the possibility to adjust or enter the data manually. Besides that, and this is not specifically unique to sustainability area, but it is crucially important for the sustainability area. Majority of you have most probably by now realized that within the requirements which are put down by various methodologies and frameworks, we find not only the quantitative KPIs, which can be visualized and collected in form or based on a quantitative data, but the methodologies require or also ask for a lot of information, which is or which has a qualitative character in the form of self-declarations, in the form of explanations, in the form of a simple written text outlining various results or various actions taken by the organization. And all of this means that it is very much changing the traditional, I would say, reporting and data analytical process, which usually in a very simplified form can be outlined, such as finding the right data, integrating them in the reporting solution and visualizing them, because we also need to incorporate within the sustainability suite many additional functions which, as I mentioned, either serve or either provide the possibility to enhance the automatically collected data by additional data sets or by additional information, but as well functions which help us to overall govern and manage the information, track the submission, provide various auxiliary information about the coherence of the overall data set and the readiness of the information, and as well, and Vadim will talk about it in the next section, since we speak about quite sensitive data sets, there is a lot of care and effort which we typically put into making sure that not only the data is properly secured, but also that the data is really visible and transparent only to the people who should have access to it, and also that the data is published or made available through the solution at the right moment in time to the right groups of users. Without going into too many details, the bottom line, which I'm trying to put down as, let's say, foundations for the further discussion, is that sustainability really brings additional requirements which many times are not out of the box incorporated in the analytical and reporting platforms such as SAC. That's point number one. But the point number two, and this is getting me back actually to the title of this overall section, is that the additional requirements sometimes lure the companies which we talk to into believing that you need to really build up a completely dedicated technology, completely dedicated system solely for the sustainability reporting and analytics, simply due to the reason that they say, look, SAC or Power BI or Tableau or anything else simply doesn't do the job, doesn't contain the functions which we need. Nevertheless, we really don't so much like this approach, because that effectively means that if you really implement an additional system solely for the sustainability reporting, that really means that first of all, you have additional system in the IT landscape which you need to take care of. But second of all, it's making it a little bit more complicated to combine the sustainability data with the rest of the dashboards and reports and reporting suites which are already present in the company and in the overall IT landscape. And this is the reason why we already several months ago put our heads together and started heavily thinking if there is a way how to enhance the typical out-of-the-box functionalities of SAC with additional modules to really satisfy all the requirements which the sustainability and data analytics, sustainability reporting and data analytics are actually bringing to the field in a way that we can really manage everything within one tool. And that's maybe a nice handover to you, Vadim, because you're very much into the specifics of that area.
Thank you, Karel. My pleasure to take over. And I believe you're absolutely correct on that part. One of the things I would like to add on top of the reasoning behind the SAC pick is, of course, one additional, which is it is a platform that is actually closest to our hearts. So that might be worth saying as well. But over the time, of course, the platform has severely matured. I believe some of you, and maybe most of you, are familiar with either some or all aspects of the platform. And it's very worthwhile mentioning that over the last years, the platform has matured significantly. And as for what we are currently delivering with that platform and looking into topics specific to either ESG or other areas of expertise, it covers our needs thoroughly. And that might be a good bridge to the implementation best practice part, where I would like to mention that, like we said, the solution that we are proposing or the ideas behind it are exactly directly in SAC. So that means at the very forefront is, of course, a robust, flexible data model, which stands for actually multiple models in some scenarios, where, for example, we might consider advanced narrative handling or advanced publication management, etc. But at the very forefront, of course, is the model that handles the KPIs, that receives and imports the data that are at the very center of the solution, and that feeds, of course, the reporting part, the visualization layer, either applications or stories. And generally speaking, when we are looking into the solution, one of the suggestions or already opened points that were mentioned by Karel were exactly that by default, SAC might not have the full support of some of the utilities that we find are very helpful in the area of ESG. And that exactly brings us to the best practice part, which is built on our previous experiences within projects on either the same domain or also from different fields of expertise. Because narration engine, for example, the idea that the data doesn't always give the full story traverses across all of the fields of expertise. And I would say that it's safe to say that. And very similarly with, let's say, Excel import, basically when we are looking at SAC as a future-proof tool, we still can't rule out being in the need of enabling companies with an ability to reach into how they currently manage the system and or handle the data collections. Because across either company, there is multiple levels of data preparedness and readiness, either into the degree of automation, where we can expect that all of the source data is transformed and extracted and being ready to be automatically imported into the solution, or it actually still resides in the hands of the very people in the organizations on various levels of the organizational structure, meaning on different companies, different entities, and lines of businesses, of course. So definitely Excel import is one of our important custom plugins that we consider as a vital part of the solutions that we introduce. And that goes as well for the approval workflows, publication management, and dynamic security settings. With the dynamic security settings, that is exactly what Karel already started mentioning. Their idea that, of course, certain data within all of the domains, and in this particularity ESG domain, are about to be viewed only by a specific group of people at specific point of time, when it is important to consider the data readiness of the overall data collection cycle. So we can imagine that by the time automated systems or automated imports are already done, there are already company members or planners that need to do certain adjustments or introduce additional data, which is still manually collected. And at the same time, it is not still at that point of time ready to be displayed to external stakeholders, of course. So at that very point of time, we are considering the dynamic visibility of the data and approval workflows, where absolutely typically what we are dealing with is a central team, which of course at the end of the data collection cycle still needs to have a full control over what has been reported and what and when is it about to be displayed. So just to introduce or reiterate, we support SAC with additional plugins that make the ESG solutions in SAC much more tangible and even capable. That would be the correct word. And since we were already speaking about different levels of data preparedness, of course, it comes into mind what sources of the data might be at the core of the solution or the data preparation. It is important to mention that SAC at its core is not a transformation tool or transformation engine primarily. It can handle specific and quite a high level of transformation, in fact, but it is not the designed main use of the platform itself. And with that comes to mind the data preparation, which should, in our eyes and in our practice, take place on different platforms, where the SAC receives already the KPIs to the or activity data and derived KPIs on the aggregated and prepared staged level of transformation. And with that, of course, the ability is to connect to different systems that can be underlying. And many of the systems are existing in the companies, definitely. And it is just a question of where the transformation should take place exactly, and where the best fit inside the organization that is implementing the ESG solution should reside in. Of course, when we reach even deeper, we can expect many raw data sources, and that brings me to the data preparedness. It isn't of utmost importance that all of the data is received automatically. It can be that exactly some of the activity data coming from, let's say, invoice levels is not automatically populated and aggregated. And that's exactly where the Excel plugins come in play. Or with the smart meters, similarly, where manual imports can come in place, manual inputs can come in place, where, for example, the data is not even on the level of prepared invoices, etc. And with that being said, I believe we might reach for the customer examples, which are coming just next.
Super. Thank you, Vadim. I hope what you have taken out of the first, maybe a little bit more theoretical part, are really the specifics of the sustainability reporting and analytics, and also our, I would say, typical approach to that, and things which you need to take into consideration compared to the traditional, for instance, finance reporting projects. But what I will talk about the upcoming section is really how would it be materialize everything which we have talked about until now in a practice with 3 selected customers, which I picked. Very quickly introducing each of the 3. One of them is the specialty chemical company or chemicals company in Switzerland. Here I'm even free to mention the name of the customer because we have a long-standing collaboration also on the development of or co-development of some of the products. So that's a company called Clariant. You might find a lot of details about the results of our, let's say, still existing and happily running collaboration in the area of sustainability on many places on the internet. The second example which I brought to this presentation is one of the larger or possibly even largest European insurance companies, and the last company which I brought is the basic luxury retail company in Switzerland. The reason why I took specifically these 3 is that each one of them approached the sustainability analytics from a little bit different angle, because the needs of the company and also the overall target of each of the companies was a little bit different. So it is also important for me to highlight that whenever we speak about sustainability analytics, it's not just one, let's say, one result or one objective which suits everybody, but there are also a little bit different approaches how you can at least start the implementation activities. Very quickly talking about Clariant, the specialty chemicals company, their overall objective was in the domain of the environmental sustainability, in the domain of calculation of the carbon footprint. However, compared to the typical approach, they chose not to predominantly focus on the, let's say, company-wide carbon footprint, but similarly to many other manufacturing companies, they very quickly realized that majority of their emissions come from the production part of their business processes, of their value chain. And that's why, together with Clariant, we focus the sole implementation on calculation of the carbon footprint on a product level, which effectively means that now Clariant is capable for each of their shipments, for each of their products, also to supply a certificate regarding the carbon footprint of each of the items which they are providing to their customers. The interesting part, and it is one key learning which I will reiterate on at the end of this call, is that for Clariant, reducing the carbon footprint of their products was not only a necessity, or they didn't take it solely as a necessity, but for them it opened the possibility to a little bit transform their overall business model. What it means is that Clariant is more and more positioning themselves not only as a company which is producing high quality products to their customers, but also high quality and low carbon products to their customers, which effectively means that any additional costs which are arising on the side of Clariant to basically decarbonize their products are in most of the cases, let's say, balanced out by the increase of the prices on their side. And they very quickly realized that, let's say, this field in the area of chemical products is still relatively open, and they are trying to pitch themselves as, I would say, one of the first companies taking this approach on such a level. You might see in the section devoted to the technology stack that together with Clariant we have utilized, besides the SAC SA as well, SAP Business Technology Platform. The reason is very simple. To give Clariant the real-time possibility to simulate alternative product compositions using materials with lower carbon footprint means that we continuously need to run tremendous amount of recalculations, which wouldn't be easily doable solely within SAC. Which means that while still majority of the solution lies within SAC, we are using our own custom built calculation engine to basically continuously recalculate any inputs, any simulations, any possible analysis which are being performed. Moving on to the insurance company, there the approach was a little bit different. The name of the game was transparency, which means that our dear insurance client mainly targeted ESG-wide coverage of almost 130 KPIs. And as you have most probably realized from everything which we said until now, that means that the key or the core body of the solution really is providing the possibility to collect, provide, adjust, validate, and modify all the necessary data which are not generally found or which were not generally found in the core systems of the company, and blend everything into one unified set of reports, giving the sustainability transparency not only towards the internal stakeholders, but mainly towards the external stakeholders. Again, there are two new components besides SAC. Business technology platform, which in this case was simply chosen because the insurance company already had it, and they preferred that compared to SAC. Nevertheless, from the perspective of functions, we could achieve the same function parity within SAC. And what is important, they used SAP Business Warehouse for the data integration and data blending, which Vadim was talking about. The last company being the luxury retail company, again, is returning us back to the environmental domain and to the calculation of the overall CO2 footprint, where in case of the retail company, they really mostly, or the key, I would say, objective was to track the progress of the company towards their net zero or sustainability targets, and have continuously basically a clear awareness about where the company is standing towards their external commitments when it comes to decarbonization of their operations. There, the implementation is solely based on SAC and very much similar, let's say, to the stack which we were talking about in the previous sections. When we take a look a little bit more under the hood of each of the solutions, as you have most probably realized, the core of the solution within for the chemical company really lies in automated calculation of the carbon footprint for each of the products, and giving the company the possibility to start playing with various assumptions, such as how does it reduce our carbon footprint if we switch supplier A for supplier B, or if we a little bit alternate the product composition using maybe more expensive but higher quality inputs to the production itself. So overall, besides the general report, which you can imagine for each of the product groups, hierarchies, etc., the company has the possibility through the tools straight away to start modifying the bill of materials, the individual parts of the product tree, to basically find the right cross-section of the reduction of carbon footprint versus the price of each of their products. On the level or in the area of the insurance company, their huge amount of effort was really put in finding the right way how to manage the data, how to ingest, in-source, and manage the data in the most automated and most straightforward and user-friendly way. There is a huge amount of users which are part of the sustainability reporting process, and significant portion of the users also are responsible for the overall, let's say, results and transparency of the data which they are publishing towards the external world. So once again, the thickest or the largest layer of the solution was really focusing on preparation of the reliable data layer for either ad hoc or predefined ESG reporting. And on the level of retail company, or on the side of the retail company, there is one interesting aspect which we haven't talked about so much, and that's that many of the sustainability targets are also changing based on the operational and tactical activities of the company, which means that the solution very much begins at the step of definition of the net zero targets, which are continuously being adjusted and aligned based on how the company either extends their operations or grows in terms of the financial results, but as well the net zero targets very much take into account mergers and acquisitions, or basically carving out or spinning out certain business units to make sure that, let's say, the targets are always reflecting the position where the company, or which the company actually stands in. The second interesting part of the process is the allocation engine, because when it comes to the overall carbon footprint, as you can most probably imagine, significant portion of the carbon footprint, especially in the area of the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, actually come from, let's say, overhead or indirect activities. So to be able to fully analyze the results on the level of the individual business units or product groups, we need to make sure that, let's say, these emissions which can be labeled as overhead are transparently and automatically allocated basically through the organization, and to give the company the full transparency also to derive the right actions to reduce the carbon footprint. That is overall bringing me to the very last few points which we would like to pass you through this presentation. Most probably you already got a little bit of a glimpse about, let's say, what is waiting for you when it comes to the selection of the right tooling, or what can be the right angles to approach the sustainability analytics, or what are the specifics which you need to be aware of and which you carefully need to tackle and resolve. However, although it might seem like a little bit of a scary exercise, something which might be a little bit new and will require a substantial change management, whoever we talk to, we really recommend, don't wait further. Start now and iterate the solution step by step as you go. There is still quite a lot of discussions about what is the right framework or the methodology to be used for the reporting, which set of KPIs should be implemented. Nevertheless, especially in the last months, we see that there is a significant cross-section of each of the methodologies, which are giving us a pretty good foundations to select the right target for the company to focus on. My second advice in this case would be to consider sustainability not only as a burden, not only as an additional mandatory step which needs to be performed and entail costs, but also as something which can be transformed into a competitive advantage. Remember the example of Clariant. I won't go too much into details, but the sustainability really allowed them to basically enter a little bit new business model, which is also bringing them substantial gains on the level of financial results. And similar to Clariant, I think for many of the companies, there are opportunities or sustainability-driven opportunities which can be leveraged. And the third recommendation, which I'm usually giving, is to not to try to tackle everything at once, all the ESG requirements and targets in one shot, but really carefully select the most important bits and pieces which are relevant for your business. Implement them in the first step, learn how to handle the whole domain, get a little bit more experience with the technological stack, and then look for further KPIs and further requirements and targets, which you can incorporate as you go further down the road.
Exactly, Karel. I think this perfectly covers what you and me are discussing all the time. And what we see in addition is number 4 here, that identification of required data is really a success factor. That sounds very technical, but in my eyes, it's not technical at all, or not only technical at all, because again, when we do not talk about financial reporting here, but about sustainability reporting, you definitely need different data, and it's not always trivial to find that data. And I give you an example. If a finance person needs to report a profit and loss statement, it's very clear, very straightforward in many cases where the data can come from and what key figures or KPIs I would need. That does not apply if I talk about energy consumption, if I talk about reports about female leadership or child labor, and let's just stick with energy consumption. It's not only about electricity. Where do I get precise data about my heating, about my fleet, about the cars that belong to my fleet? That really gives us new questions. And what we really learn and strongly recommend is tackle data requirements at the very beginning of your sustainability journey. Otherwise, your reports will not be really valid, and that then at the end of the day doesn't fulfill the project goal or the core requirement. And last but not least, in terms of success factors, keep your technology setup lean and agile. What does that mean? Again, sustainability analytics is a journey, and we always recommend to avoid that you build up a very complex technology stack and you deploy it in a big bang over 2 or 3 years. Instead, coming back to the iterative and agile approach, you should implement something that can be deployed within a few months max, to help you learn, and you always can increase or extend your technology setup over time. That's not the problem, but to be able to manage what you implement, you should make small steps at the beginning and add additional tools throughout your journey. Otherwise, it's very hard to have a first go live within a reasonable time frame. And it's perfectly possible, as we also saw in the client examples, that you start with SAC as your single tool in that landscape, and then add, for example, a BW, a business technology platform, additional interfaces over time. But for the first step, SAC is the perfect tool to start with. And having said that, we come to the final section of our webinar. I can see first questions here in my menu, but again, feel free to ask additional questions. Feel free to post them. Feel free to ask in German. Schreiben Sie Ihre Fragen auf Deutsch, and I will translate. It's not a problem. I think time-wise we can still add 1 or 2 questions, but one first question that I see here, I think that covers publication requirements. How can we, or I understand, is SAC a feasible tool to tackle publication requirements? And how I understand the question, otherwise please specify in a second posting, is can I use SAC to meet publication requirements in terms of an annual external PDF report that presumably can also be printed? Karel, is that something that you want to tackle?
Mm-hmm. Happy to do that. When it comes to publications, there are 2, I would say, separate or parallel requirements. One is really the requirement to externalize the results in a form of a PDF or in a form of a let's say paper-like, so to say, declaration. And the second requirement, which we see growing, is also to make the data available, or to publish the data in a form of an XML or any structured form, which can be automatically processed by other, let's say, reporting platforms, or by, for instance, various companies which are providing the sustainability ratings and similar type of publications. SAC can do both, but not out of the box. This is one of the parts which was actually not covered in our slides, but generally we have 2 modules which are covering each of these 2 aspects. The functions which are natively supported by SAC are not sufficient for this purpose, but fortunately, as you know, SAC allows everybody or everyone to build additional functions, additional plugins, let me call it that way, in the form of analytical applications inside the solution, and both of these requirements can be covered through that part. And honestly, it's something which is common not only to the sustainability domain, but also to some of the financial reporting projects which we have implemented in the past.
So, okay, thanks, Karel. Maybe we can just add that analytic applications. That means, in fact, you build a small app within the app in terms of these so-called analytic applications, such as a smartphone app, right?
Exactly. Very well described, Michael. It is actually a separate option as opposed to Story, which is in the basic increment of SAC, basically the reporting. And within the analytical applications, it is from the very get-go an ability to, let's say, streamline the overall process of basically whatever is needs to happen inside of it. So either be it a reporting where user is driven throughout his journey, or it is a planning part, or data collection, data submission, where it can be even in a, let's say, a setup wizard approach where you are driven to pre-select certain parts and you only submit parts of the data, but overall the submission happens to a very to even more specified fields, etc.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying. Then the next question that I see, given the many open questions in ESG regulations, isn't it too early to start an SAC project? Karel, do you want to tackle that one as well?
Yeah, very, very quickly on that note. It is true, first of all. So really, when we take a look at the, let's say, most common regulations within Europe, we see that the requirements, both in terms of the general approach and the specific KPIs, are not 100% fixed. Nevertheless, there are, as I mentioned, there is a certain cross-section which serves as a very good starting point. What we usually recommend is really the cross-section between the relevant chapters of the GRI and the TCFD, where we see that there is a pretty substantial subset of the requirements which are shared between these two, and most probably will become a foundation of any other, let's say, any other methodology or any other requirement set in that area. But nevertheless, I would even like to mention the second thing. Besides, let's say, the mandatory reporting requirements or the externally driven reporting requirements, we very much really recommend in the first step to also take a look at what the company actually needs for its own existence and to support its own business model, and align these KPIs or align these requirement needs with some of the methodologies, simply to make sure that there is a future compliance with these documents. But once again, and that's one of the key messages, please don't think about the sustainability analytics and reporting simply as something which must be fulfilled because somebody else asks for it. But ideally, and if possible, try to find a way how to derive value for your own organization based on the sustainability reporting and the, I would say, subsegment actions which you take based on the results, and try to align it as much as possible with the external requirements, but don't focus solely on them, because otherwise it will mean only an additional cost for you and a, let's say, checkbox in terms of fulfilling your own obligations, but the first approach as well, besides that, brings you additional value.
Perfect. And I think we can do one more question. The question is, can I be done within 6 months? And I guess you mean done within 6 months with your SAC implementation for ESG reporting. I can take that one. I would say definitely yes. Question is whether that's then the biggest application in the world with the biggest scope. Probably not. But I would definitely say you can implement not only a small application that covers all the aspects, the E, the S, and the G within 6 months. That's perfectly realistic. And by finalizing that question, I think we are pretty much done with today's webinar. If if you have further questions, we have the mail addresses here. Please do not hesitate to contact us. I want to say thanks a lot to our colleagues from MIPCON NDC. Thanks a lot for to everybody who has joined today. Let us know if there's anything we can clarify in the aftermath of this webinar. And aside from that, I wish you a nice afternoon. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Have a lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.